So today we're going to talk about stimulants, and I am at school because whenever I do Screencast-O-Matic at home, it messes up my internet. Well, now I found out I don't have a webcam on my school computer, so sorry guys, no webcam. All right, we've already talked about caffeine and nicotine, so today we're going to talk about cocaine and amphetamines. So first, just some history of cocaine. Cocaine does come from a plant, like most of the drugs that we use. These are coca, the coca plant, and this grows in the Andes Mountains in Bolivia and Peru in South America. It's been used by the people that live there for centuries. So they chew the coca leaves, and then the drug will be released slowly as they chew it. Using it this way, it actually can be helpful to them because it helps them to work in these high elevations for a long time without getting too hungry or too tired. And used this way, it rarely results in addiction or problems of any kind. So it's probably a fairly low level release of the drug, probably comparable to caffeine or nicotine. This became popular in Europe when a product came out called Vin Mariani, and this product had coca leaves that were steeped in wine, and this was a really popular patent medicine. And remember, a patent medicine is just sold to cure a bunch of different ills. The coca leaves were actually used in the early versions of Coca-Cola. Obviously, these days, they say that they still use the leaves for flavoring, but the leaves have taken the cocaine out of them. Who knows? But obviously, they don't, we don't have any cocaine in Coca-Cola today. All right, what about amphetamines? So amphetamines come from a plant as well, and the plant is mawang, grows in China. And this has been used for centuries to treat asthma. The active ingredient in mawang is ephedrine, and this dilates the bronchioles, increases body temperature, but it does not get into the brain, and it does not cause a high or addiction. Now, you can take ephedrine and make methamphetamine, which of course is very addictive. But that takes a chemical process. Now, there aren't a huge number of these plants, so the supply was kind of a problem. So Gordon Alls in 1920 synthesized a chemical that was similar to ephedrine, and this chemical is amphetamine. And then this became widely used after that. Methamphetamine was actually synthesized in Japan by Japanese scientists. In the 90s and early 2000s, meth labs were a big problem. There's still some around, but these days most of the problems have to do with opiate use. But this was a huge problem, and people could just make this in their house. They could also make a smokable form. So like cocaine you can make crack. With methamphetamine, you can make ice, and that can be smoked. There's an African plant that gives us the drug cat, and this is another stimulant. And the active ingredient here is cathinone, which you may have heard of. The synthetic variant of cathinone, methcathinone, is much more potent than cathinone. Okay, what about cocaine? Cocaine is made from the leaves of the coca plant, obviously. As I said, it's usually mixed with a solvent like lye that somehow makes it easier to get the cocaine out of the leaves. And then you can take this and process it and make it into a powder. So this is the opening sequence of the movie Blow. And they kind of show how cocaine is picked and processed. It also shows how everything is guarded with guns. It shows people wearing masks because the substance is toxic. And it even shows children participating in this. So pause the video and take a look at that. Okay, so hopefully you were able to see that. Blow is a pretty good movie, pretty interesting, based on truth. You know, there's some things that were exaggerated, but overall it's pretty truthful. So that's something you could watch if you want to. So methamphetamine, the smokable form is called ice. With cocaine, the smokable form is called crack. So you prepare this from the powder by boiling it with sodium bicarbonate. Most of our cocaine that gets into this country is from Colombia and Mexico. So what are the acute effects of cocaine? Well, cocaine activates the sympathetic nervous system. And if you remember, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight system. So it increases heart rate, it increases blood pressure, it increases the body temperature, dilates the bronchioles, and just kind of gets your body ready for an emergency, whether that be fighting or fleeing, but just gets the body ready to go. Cocaine also produces pleasure, euphoria, gets into the brain relatively quickly, might cause you to do some things you wouldn't normally do. You feel really self-confident on cocaine. You can attend to things a little better. You're very alert. You're not tired. You're not hungry. And you move around a lot. Now, if you take a high dose, this movement can become repetitive, where you might do the same thing over and over, and that's called a stereotypy. And then amphetamine has very similar effects to cocaine, but it lasts longer, lasts 2 to 4 hours longer. All right, what are some other effects? Sorry, you guys, my screen isn't really showing you everything here, is it? Cocaine is destroyed pretty rapidly. If you snort it, that leads to the longest effect. So the effects peak in about 30 minutes, and then it lasts for an hour to an hour and a half. Intravenous cocaine and inhaled cocaine, the crack, those effects peak really quickly, 3 to 5 minutes, and it lasts anywhere from 10 to 40 minutes. So relatively short, but because it gets in the brain so fast, it's really addictive. Chewing the leaves, like the natives of the Andes Mountains have done, that cocaine ingestion leads to pretty low blood levels of the drug, which probably helps explain why people don't usually get addicted to it used that way. Okay. Come on. There we go. All right, what are the neurological effects of stimulants? So stimulant drugs affect a class of neurotransmitters called the monoamines. So this includes norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. So what cocaine does is it keeps these neurotransmitters from being reuptaken back into the presynaptic membrane. So if you remember, you've got the presynaptic membrane and the postsynaptic membrane and the synapse. The presynaptic membrane releases neurotransmitter into the synapse. Neurotransmitter binds to the postsynaptic receptors, then it unbinds, and then it gets sucked back up through these reuptake pumps. And then it can be released again. Well, cocaine blocks these reuptake pumps, so the dopamine, for instance, can remain in the synapse and keep working. Now, amphetamine does the same thing, but in addition, it enters through that pump to cause the end of the nerve to release stored neurotransmitter into the synapse. The ADHD drug methylphenidate has less effects on the heart rate and breathing than other stimulants because it affects dopamine more than norepinephrine. So that's why it's deemed safe to use for ADHD. And really all of these drugs that we're going to be talking about today have a slightly different pattern of how they affect these monoamines, norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. And that is what accounts for any different effects. Antidepressants activate some of these same synapses, but they block the serotonin and sometimes the norepinephrine transporter. And they do not have the effect of, euphoria, and they usually don't lead to abuse. Cocaine has another interesting effect. When it's applied locally, it can numb tissue. So it used to be used for eye and ear and throat surgeries because you would just apply cocaine around that area and it would numb it. And both Novocaine and lidocaine were developed from cocaine. Okay. Sorry, I'm having issues with this PowerPoint for some reason. Some effects that can apply to all stimulants are these compulsive and repetitive behaviors, the stereotypies, and again, that's with high doses, and continuous use, so using these drugs over and over, kind of in a run, can lead to psychotic behavior, which can be really similar to paranoid schizophrenia, and that includes hostility, delusions or false beliefs, belligerence, hard to deal with, hard to get along with. They might hurt themselves or other. And then they can have cocaine bugs, which is where they feel like bugs are underneath their skin and they keep scratching at it and they get sores.